let's actually make a full-on breakdown on today's price action, because actually it was extremely clean, even though we did have NFP, which just now dropped, and we had a huge move lower. But the price action leading up to it was actually very much better than expected, because I was just expecting uh, price to consolidate after reaching this 4-hour fair value gap, which it kind of did, but it was still readable. So let's go over what happened from the start. Before London opened, we knew that this 4-hour fair value gap was the target, simply by looking at this Asia sweep. It's not very relevant that it's Asian session sweep, but it's a sweep of liquidity here, and it was also a sweep of the previous day low at that moment in time, which was this sweep right here. But we swept the previous day low and also the Asia session low, and when London opened we were right here in the third candle creation of a 15-minute fair value gap. This 15-minute fair value gap, I took a paper trade here as well, which I posted a trade recap on. This 15-minute fair value gap is a breakaway gap, and we can see that we never actually tapped into it. Why did we not do that? Here, on the 1-minute time frame, this was 3 leading up to 3:15. During that time period, on the 1-minute time frame, we already had a 1-minute fair value gap higher with a swing point into it, and this new swing point instead of the first fair value gap was responsible for creating another 1-minute fair value gap higher, meaning that order flow is already confirmed higher after this fair value gap has been created, or even though this fair value gap is about to be created. So we did not sting into that, but we swept this last line of defense, which is the swing point that stings into the first fair value gap to then create the second fair value gap. We sweep that and we have a massive move higher. The trade I took was when we retraced into discount. I just wanted to see if I could get a better entry because there was no clear discount array here, so I just took the simple entry in discount with stop loss very tight below this low, because trapped traders should not be released if we are seeking opposing liquidity, and I targeted this high. That was the trade, already went over it in another video. Anyways, so after we swept this, how could we also see this was a sweep? And now we're going to start reading the candles here, because here we had this 1-minute fair value gap. We are clearly disrespecting that. We had 1 minute to offer fair value to just wick it, which never happened, but we have a deep retracement into it, even expanding to a new bullish fair value gap, which was also seen on the next candle. We created bullish fair value gaps through bearish fair value gaps, and if we are not going lower, where we're likely going, we are likely going higher. So from that moment, we are obviously not offering fair value, but we are seeking liquidity in the form of these highs. From there, we started to consolidate here, and it was very choppy price action for exactly 15 minutes, 3:30 to 3:45. So one 15-minute candle did just do absolutely nothing. Here we can see that this fair value gap, this is also quite interesting. This 1 minute fair value gap got tapped into but it had a deep retracement into it. The only thing that could validate this fair value gap then would be if the next candle, the second candle inside of the fair value gap, sweeps the previous candle low in this case, which we did here, to then continue higher. But for that to also be valid, the next candle should also be an up candle, and ideally an expansion candle higher, leading up to a new bullish fair value gap being created. But that did not happen. So then we can expect this fair value gap to be weak and not hold anymore. We can expect the rejection which we got, but this fair value gap will most likely not be responsible for pushing higher above this high. And in that case, which this is the first line of defense, then we can expect a retracement into the overlapping defense. So we could already, after the third candle here, know that we wanted to trade into this mitigation block, which is to me quite interesting. And it's just really nice to know that if the first line of defense is not holding, then the overlapping defense is the target. And it's just a confidence boost when you hindsight backtest like this. So we trade into this, and we end up continuing higher, taking out the liquidity at that moment. Here, same thing. What becomes the target when this fair value gap fails? We come above this high, but we are preventing a bullish fair value gap from being created with a huge bearish momentum candle. That candle shows disrespect to this 1 minute fair value gap, but it can still be validated or respected if the next candle, this up candle, sweeps the previous candle low, which it did. But then again, the next candle after that should be an up candle as well, which it was not. But instead we created a bearish fair value gap, and we now know that the target becomes liquidity. So we are constantly either offering fair value or we are seeking liquidity. Either offering fair value or seeking liquidity. So when we have this fair value gap lower, this, if you're trading futures, I would not say this is very optimal for Forex, but for a futures trader, this could be a trade towards this liquidity. Just capitalizing on the small moves. From that, let's see on the time frame above if we do have a reason for sweeping that. Yes. Here on the 5-minute time frame, here as well, we came above, or we actually tapped a 5-minute fair value gap here, which got respected, but then we swept the context target, the highest swing point that made retracement into this fair value gap. We tapped that, we swept the high. This is now the discount array we can continue lower from, but we also have to remember that we have the overlapping defense, which is this order block. And I'm marking the body now because the body, or because the wick is not overlapping with a fair value gap. So I'm using the body in that case, and we can see that we tapped into that to then have the last push higher into the 4-hour fair value gap. So on the 1-minute time frame, if you want to look for an entry at this moment in time, which I did not do because I'm not trading NFP day, but on the 1-minute time frame here, when we start again the liquidity and the offering for value theory, we have this 1-minute fair value gap, which can be responsible for pushing price lower if that is what price desires if that is what price wants to do. We can see that we are giving a rejection, and this wick, this is also beautiful because this candle already mitigates this order block. So we have already, with this one candle, mitigated the first line of defense and the overlapping defense, meaning that if we do not continue lower on the next candle, the target becomes super clear in the form of this, which is then seen as the last line of defense. But if this is getting taken and we have bullish fair value gaps going towards it, which we do have here, then we are likely not even continuing lower, because the last line of defense is only a valid PD array if we have very slow and choppy movement towards it to then sweep it. But here we are clearly seeing that we are not offering fair value, but we are indeed seeking liquidity, so then the target becomes this high. It's extremely ego boosting just going back and looking at it like this, but it's also extremely valuable, and I highly recommend you do so as well. Just go back and look back in price to see what actually happened. But this candle alone told us everything, or actually the second candle here. Because the moment this second candle closed bullish after tapping in and partially respecting this order block with the fair value gap, the moment this closed bullish, and even the candle after traded above this respect or this wick, you can just blindly go long, even though I would not recommend it on a Forex account. You can just go long, cover whatever you want, whatever you feel comfortable with, and target liquidity. This is, of course, nothing is guaranteed. This is all probabilities, but reading candles is extremely helpful, and just knowing when price is offering for value and when price is seeking liquidity, it will help you a lot in your trading journey. But after we reached the 4-hour fair value gap, we at that moment in time did, let me clear it up here, do think we did have unusual context actually, which we did here. We can see that we tapped the 4-hour, we had this expansion candle higher, which could be responsible as well for creating a 15-minute bullish fair value gap here. But the next candle continues lower. It's a bearish, aggressive move lower, preventing the fair value gap from being created, the bullish fair value gap, whilst we are sweeping the previous candle high. So here on the 1-minute time frame, this sweep looks better, so let's use that instead. So right here, as soon as if we mark out the moment where the fair value gap is being prevented, which would be actually right here. Wait, let me see. This candle closed at 4:45. So then it would be here. Something like this. Anyways, at this moment when the fair value gap is being prevented, it's the same here. You could, of course I'm not just saying you should enter, but if you want to play it more risky, this is already an entry as well towards, because now this order block is not valid because we do not have a fair value gap higher. So this is the next discount array here on the 15 minutes, which we can target. And on the 1 minute here as well, we can see we can just mark out where the overlapping part is, where the first line of defense part is, and we can place our stop loss based on that, which is what I am always doing. Because right here, this would be, if I enter right here, the moment we come below this, the moment we have this candle, then this would be the overlapping defense. Because here we have a fair value gap, which this part is the first line of defense. When price then comes to this order block slash breaker, it's two premium raise that could push us lower. So am I expecting price to just come up into some random ass PD ray all the way up here? Not really, because there is only an overlapping defense here. There is no overlapping defense or no third PD ray up here that is any different from the overlapping defense here that could push us lower. So here I could go pretty aggressively with my stop loss, and I would place it above this swing high right here. And that would be my stop loss. Of course, this is not a trade I would prefer, but it is something I am thinking of doing when I get my futures account, because I will eventually try out futures. So this practice we're doing right now is extremely beneficial for that. And we can see we delivered very fast towards the liquidity. And it's also the same here, because this, we are sweeping that high. We want to see opposing liquidity, which is in the form of this low and eventually this low. And how are we seeing that we are sweeping the high? Well, we had the first line of defense, this fair value gap. This candle stinks into the fair value gap. We wicks it. We show respect to the fair value gap. The candle after should be an up candle to then create a new bullish fair value gap. But the next candle is a down candle trading below the first initial candle low as well, showing that this fair value gap is not strong enough. Okay, so what can we continue from then? We have this order block, the overlapping defense. I'm using the wick because it's overlapping directly with the fair value gap. So we have that order block. We wick it as well. The next candle should be an up candle. If that doesn't happen, but it's a down candle like it is here, we can expect the target to be liquidity. Why is that? Because we are not offering fair value. So then liquidity is the target. And we can basically see here on the 1 hour as well, since we are indeed encountering resistance in the form of that 4 hour fair value gap, we can then expect the retracement. Of course, we do have to remember that we do have an NFP, which will likely, any of the big three, NFP, FOMC or CPI, will most likely be responsible for creating the long-term swing point, or the real top or real bottom, whatever you want to call it. So when we rejected the 4 hour value with this high, I was not really convinced that this was the real high, since we had not yet mitigated the resistance yet. But what we can see is after we have this 4 hour value gap, we reject lower, we can expect the retracement to be at least into discounts, even optimal trade entry, which we did get. And no, we did not tap the overlapping defense here. Why did we not come all the way down into this order block? And that is simply because we did come into discount here, but at that moment in time, we had already created a new discount rate that could push us higher from this point. And that would be the previous 1 hour candle low, which we swept. This discount array is a valid discount array. And we swept that, we can see that by the wick, to then push higher, sweep out the fake top, which we can see is unusual context on the 15-minute as well. We did have a super clean 15-minute ST lower with this fair value gap here. We stung into that, but we did never create the second fair value gap lower. But we prevented the fair value gaps here, and then we swept this 1 hour previous candle low inside of discount. So when we see this candle, even here on the 15 minutes, we know this is a sweep. And since we have not created a follow-up 15-minute bearish fair value gap, we have no valid PD arrays or resistance that could push us lower and is withholding price from reaching this high. But the thing you have to know is that also we have no resistance from that high to that high. We have no fair value gap. This fair value gap has already been mitigated. We have no order block, no nothing. We have the swing high, and we have this swing high. So if this is getting taken, this is most likely also getting taken. So if we go into the 1 minute or even the 5 minutes, we can see that after the sweep, if you want to wait for more confirmation, we did not trade into this 1 minute fair value gap. Was created though with momentum, and we pushed higher, creating this 1 minute fair value gap. Had kind of choppy price action here because it was building up to NFP. Some weird movements here. Overall, let's not go into the 1 minute because the price action before NFP on the 1 minute is just not that good looking. But we can see that we did indeed take out the high or the highs before NFP release and then just fell down aggressively lower. So today's price action was extremely nice, and yeah, hopefully next week we can get some more of this price action but without NFP. Yeah, hopefully you learned something, and I'll see you next week.